Hi, I'm Mike. I'm a runner and gamer from the great state of Maine who went to school in the middle state of Ohio and became a philosophy professor here in Florida. I am unannouncing that I am your 2026 uncandidate for governor of my adopted state of Florida. This, of course, is a parody campaign, but desperate times do call for desperate choices, and I'm definitely a desperate choice. As to why I'm doing this, well, over the years, I've joked about running for office. Used to be running for president, and every time there's a presidential election, I joke about, hey, I should run because, hey, why settle for the lesser of two evils, and the usual desperate times thing. But it seems like there may be no more elections at some point in the future, and so if I'm ever going to, run a parody campaign, this could be my last chance. Florida effectively is a one-party state, so pretty much any campaign run by anybody who's not a Republican is going to be a parody campaign. So why am I a uncandidate? There are many reasons for this, but I'll cover the two big ones. The first one, obviously enough, is money. As I said, I'm a philosophy professor. I come from a family of teachers, but my dad taught math, then high school, then retired, then did some other stuff, then became a college professor, teaching math, and then retired again. My mother also involved in education, working as a guidance counselor for years before retiring. And so, not surprisingly, being a teacher from a family of teachers, I lack the millions of dollars needed to run my own campaign. I don't have a huge inheritance. I've not engaged in questionable corrupt practices, perhaps involving Medicaid or Medicare scams. So I don't have lots of money. Running for office, like running in those Nike cheater shoes. Sorry, some people love to run in those, but they know they're cheating. Uh, Running for office requires piles and piles of money. Now, while many people tend to think, for some reason, that it's the wealthy politician, someone who already has millions or billions who cannot be bought, we should think about this. People are wealthy typically because they really care about money. Because you can, if you're driven for something else, like you want to cure cancer, or you want to develop a new operating system, or invent a new microchip, or run really fast, or you know put the ball through the hoop really well, you'll focus on that. You may still make money doing it, but your main focus will be doing the thing. And so people who are very, very wealthy, unless they just was given to them, which often is most often the case, they really care about money. And so it would make sense that they would be interested in getting more money. So not saying they would be people who would automatically be bought, but they'd be very interested in getting money. And so in this case, in a way, I'm kind of a good candidate, but also terrible because I don't have lots of money. But that also indicates that I'm not like super into money. Now, I do care about money, obviously, because I've grown accustomed to having food to eat, and I really like living indoors. I mean, I like being outside as well, but when we're having rainstorms and hurricanes and those damn mosquitoes, I like being where they are, not being inside. And so, even though, yeah, I'm not gonna say I care nothing of money, because obviously you have to, because if you don't, you die. But money's not really my driving force. It's other stuff like philosophy and running and so forth. Now, but you might say, even though I don't have money myself, there are plenty of billionaire oligarchs out there who currently pretty much rule America. How do we know? Well, if you look at what the people, the majority of people want, and what the oligarchs want, when you look at the laws that get passed, it's not typically what we want, it's what they want. And this is across all political spectrums. There's a surprising amount of agreement between Americans of all political stripes, and there's a lot of manufactured controversy. If you happen to be like a Republican or Democrat, talk to your neighbors, and you'll find that unless you get off onto these culture war, bullshit issues, you'll agree with most things. Like, hey, we should have better health insurance. Hey, we should, have a better economy. Hey, in Florida, we should have lower costs for housing. We should have better insurance coverage, with all the storms, etc. And you could spend all day. And again, as long as you steer clear of the bullshit culture war issues that are manufactured, you'll find you have a lot of agreement with your neighbor. And maybe even on the bullshit culture war stuff, you may find if you talk about them, you still have some agreements. So getting back to the oligarchs and why I wouldn't take their money, I wouldn't take it because I've got ethics and it would be wrong to just accept that money. And I also have a commitment to democracy. And this goes, kind of a family tradition. My family goes way back in the United States. And so long term, I guess my family is like long term democracy supporters. And this is not to say this makes me any more of American than anybody else, because even though my family's been here a long time, anybody who's been here and become an American, you're just as American as I am, because that's how America works, at least for now. Because just being born here makes you an American, and of course getting naturalized and making the choice makes you an American, and all Americans are Americans. Just basic logic. Again, for now. Now you might say, even though I'm opposed to the billionaire oligarchs, I could surely get money from small donors, people like Bernie Sanders, etc. Even some of the Democrats, in addition to their billionaire donors, they do get some money from small donors. But let us speak truthfully. I'm a philosopher, so I'll generally say true things or try to say true things, even though it's often to my disadvantage. For pretty much all of us who aren't, millionaires and billionaires, and apparently times are tough even for those poor millionaires, because a million doesn't go quite as far as it used to. Times are very hard. Wages are low. Even though our productivity is ever increasing, our employers pay us less and less relative to what we produce. So great if you're rich, and not so great if you're not. Inflation, of course, is pretty brutal. Things keep getting more and more expensive. And as everyone's been complaining about, eggs are expensive. And that's not any, not directly, like Trump or Biden's fault, because they don't control eggs. It's the bird flu, essentially. The birds get infected. And unfortunately, the way you deal with it to keep it from spreading, just killing, decimating the flocks, you kill the birds. Now, they're working on a vaccine for this, which should be good. And weirdly enough, of course, human vaccines apparently like being opposed by the government, bird vaccines in. I guess that shows who's more important, perhaps, or how we look at things. But anyways, so eggs expensive. And we have all these other problems we're facing. Healthcare is super expensive. Healthcare insurance is expensive. There's a lack of affordable housing. And we could go on all day. And for the most part, with some notable exceptions, I'm thinking, of course, of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, most of our politicians do not care about us. They have abandoned us, and intelligently so, in favor of people who have much more money. They're serving the interest of those who can give them the most, the billionaires and millionaires. And so our politicians, if they're not actually trying to hurt us, they're definitely not trying to help us. So everyone out there, including myself, you and I need the money far more than any politician. And of course, if you foolishly gave me money, I tend to end up spending it on things like running shoes, computer stuff, and Dungeons and Dragons books. So if small donors are out and billionaires are definitely out, what about a political party? Surely any political party in Florida would consider a philosophy professor who not only plays Dungeons and Dragons, but writes adventures for it, would be the perfect candidate, and they would love to throw money at me. Now, it is true, I'm in a political party. The one that loses all the time. Yeah, the Democrats. So why am I a Democrat? Well, part of it is family history. I'm from Maine. My family, my parents are teachers. My grandparents, work for on my dad's side, working class, and so we generally support Democrats because historically they've been less terrible to workers than the Republicans in recent years. Well, although Democrats are pretty terrible now too. So why am I, in addition to that, why am I a Democrat? Well, one very practical reason is Florida is a closed primary state. So if I want to have a role in deciding which Democrat's going to lose, I got to be a Democrat. Similarly, if I wanted to have a role in picking which Republican's going to win, I have to be a Republican. So why Democrat over Republican? Well, one of the main reasons is that the Republican Party seems to lie about everything now. They lie about facts. They lie about values. And I'm a philosopher. I really can't get behind, lying. I mean, as a philosopher, I can get behind being wrong about stuff, because that's part of what we do as philosophers is we come up with all these ideas about ethics and reality and, etc. And then we're generally wrong about it because we're trying to figure things out. And so I have no problem with people being honestly in good faith mistaken, but intentional lying and deceit is just not good. And also, I teach ethics, so I couldn't really consistently be a person who teaches ethics and critical thinking and embrace a strategy of lying, a strategic lying, and a lot of the evil stuff. So what are the Democrats? Are they angels and saints? Well, no. They largely have embraced, instead of embracing strategic lying, they've embraced strategic silence. They just simply don't don't talk about the problems that much, and don't really address what are the likely real causes. So essentially, you have a choice between which evil do you pick. The Republicans are like really evil. Democrats, some good. Again, Elizabeth Warren. Bernie's not a technically Democrat, but seems like a good guy. Now, the Democrats have also one of the many reasons why they got defeated in the presidential election, was they seem to have decided to go Republican light. They decided to run, more conservative. But realistically, Trump is the real Republican deal. So if you want to be, a conservative and you want to embrace Trumpian stuff, you go with Trump. I mean, it'd be ridiculous to go with the Democrats if what you like is Trump stuff. And the Democrats trying to do Trump stuff, be all hardcore in immigration, throwing trans people under the bus, embracing, I guess maybe they're going to start, they've already embraced billionaires. People are going to say, we've got something, hey, if you want to do all that stuff, the Republicans do it better, which is totally reasonable. If you want all of that stuff, if you want, billionaires to rule, if you want to throw trans people under the bus, if you, really hate immigrants, and you really love the wealthy and don't really care about healthcare, etc., Republican Party, way to go. Democrats trying to be like that, they're just going to get wiped out because the Republicans are the real deal, and Democrats will just be basically cosplaying at doing the same thing. So Democrats, basically, for a lot of terrible reasons. I'm a Democrat. So, but of course, I think I could lose as well as any Democrat in Florida, because the Republicans essentially own Florida now. So why not me? I can lose just as well as any other Democrat. But that's kind of the main reason I'm not a real candidate, obviously, is money. It's all about the money. The second reason, the most, one I probably should have led with, is I'm not actually running. As I said, I'm an uncandidate who's unrunning, and I'm unannouncing it. So I'm not really running. Why not? Well, main reason is I got a job. I'm a philosophy professor. Yes, Ron, my friend Ron, not here, but he has never been able to convince him that philosophy professor is a real job. I mean, I get paid and everything, but yeah, being a philosophy professor is a real job, despite what Ron says. But most importantly, I have a job at a state school. So because freedom, I have to ask permission from my people above me, to run for office. I probably have to quit. There may be possibly some retaliation against me. They might do terrible things to me if I ever became a credible candidate. And I don't mean my university, but since I'm a state employee, it makes me incredibly vulnerable to retaliation. So because I would have to ask permission, I'd probably have to quit. I'd probably never be able to go back to my job. Again, I'm not a millionaire, so I can't just say, hey, I'm not going to work for a year and run for office. And so can't do that. That's the main thing, not running. So what will my uncampaign be? Probably will just be creating random videos about my unpolicies and stuff. Being a philosopher, I will for real offer some serious and perhaps even thoughtful proposals to solve what I consider to be real problems. And although, unfortunately, as much as I loathe doing this, I'll probably have to say some philosophical things about the culture war bullshit sideshow that always makes into the center stage. Things that literally do not affect your life at all, but seems to just dominate politics. Like, for example, like wokeness. That does not affect you in any meaningful way. I mean, what is that? What is even wokeness? And yet it's this huge battle. Instead of addressing things that really affect us, things like, well, the price of eggs, things like the high cost of housing, things like the high cost of health insurance, things like the infrastructure in Florida, things like what are we going to do about the these hurricanes that keep coming in? We keep getting wrecked by them. Do we have a plan for this? Do we have a plan for energy? Dealing with energy requirements for the future. Do we have coherent plans about dealing with technological changes, employment shifts, population shifts? If all the migrant workers are booted out of Florida, what do we do about that? And instead of getting into this culture war bullshit about wokeness and all that other crap, we should actually focus on what's hurting people in Florida. And of course, politicians generally don't want to do that because solving real problems is really difficult. And in many cases, the people causing the problems are paying for the campaigns for politicians, so they don't want to solve the problems that are making the money that they're used to running on. And of course, that's a final reason why I'm not actually running. Thoughtful policy stuff is really boring for most people. So, doing well or being good at being a politician, well, actually, scratch that. Being good at the job of, say, a governor should be something like doing tech support. I'll use that as an example. So because I know a fair amount, not like a ton, but I know quite a bit about computers and technology, my family and friends always have me do like the repair stuff. Something goes wrong, they want me to fix it. Years ago, I would try to explain to them like how this stuff worked. Back in the old days, I'd talk about like IRQs, conflicts, and talking about like how the networking works and why their video card driver, for example, is conflicting with something else. And I found pretty quickly that they did not care why problems were happening for the most part. They recognized there was something bad happening in their computer and they wanted me to fix it. And they wanted to know that I knew what I was doing so I could fix it for them. And they definitely didn't want me to explain what was going on. And once I fixed it, they didn't want me to explain really how I fixed it because that would be boring and complicated, because they knew that I would always, if something basically said, hey, if someone goes wrong, we'll just come and get you again. And I think that's how, in a way, we should pick our leaders, is we should find someone who can fix the stuff. And because it's not really our job if we're not, the leaders to do this. And it's fine that we don't know all that stuff. For example, I don't know how to fix my air conditioner. It's also super dangerous, so I leave that to people who know what they're doing. Similarly, I can do quite a bit of work on my truck, but if something major like the transmission, I would leave that to the mechanics, someone who knows what they're doing. And so we want to find someone who knows what they're doing. And as I mentioned before, one thing the Republicans tend to do is, to their, I don't want to say credit, but they do, say, here are the causes of the problems. And this is pretty much always a lie, like they blame it on migrants or trans people. And they propose a solution. So essentially they're doing that. They're saying, hey, we recognize there's problems. They make up a cause and then don't solve it. But it creates the appearance they're doing something. And the Democrats have largely just decided to not acknowledge, the problems and the causes. So I think, obviously in all seriousness, that I would hate to be governor because that'd be a lot of work. And who would want to do like a really hard job unless they were going to get some profit, power from that. But we should pick someone who would, actually understands what's going wrong and can fix it. Just like when my friends and relatives, get me to go fix stuff for them. That's, with computers, it's complicated. We should probably pick like our governor based on someone that understands what's going on, isn't lying about it, and can solve those problems for us and is acting in our interest, not somebody else's. So stay safe and be sure to vote. But as mentioned earlier, Florida, much like North Korea and China and Cuba and the old Soviet Union, we're effectively a one-party state. Yeah, I think there's like a couple Democrats in office somewhere, but the only way to change that is through voting. Well, that's a lot. Not the only way. There's like revolution and stuff because, American Revolution. But main thing is like voting. So stay safe, and I'll see you in the future.